well. And first, I want to acknowledge the amazing work that you are doing. And, if you're listening and you're one of Dr. Keila's patients, you are so lucky to be in really great hands. And I just really appreciate the work that you're doing also with this series for women's health to really support that, because I think, it's such a crucial time to be doing that. So thank you. And I want to acknowledge you for the good work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you, my friend. It is such a strange time right now, but we have so much awareness around mental health and all the things that you and I do. But my thought process being that just because we're at home or we're trying to truck our way through all of this, it doesn't mean that our IBS or our PMS or our anxiety is necessarily going away. In fact, for many of us, we're more aware than ever because we have so much time to think on it. So my goal is just really to help serve women and their families, to give them resources and connect them with amazing professionals like you that really know their stuff so that they can dig in deeper. So, talk to us a little bit about resilience. I know this is a word that I personally started to hear pop up in the last 5 or 6 years or so. And beyond that, I hadn't heard much about it apart from the world of horticulture. So as a horticulturalist and landscaper, so apart from being a massage therapist. So tell us a little bit about what resilience actually means and why the heck is this relevant to women's health with all the other things that we are navigating?
Absolutely. Well, resilience first, to start off, I'd like to define it because oftentimes women have this idea about resilience that it's only something you can execute on when you're going through stress or crisis or difficulty, and it's all about bouncing back. But the definition of resilience that I use is that resilience is the ability to prepare for, recover from, and adapt to stress, challenge, and change. And I really want to emphasize that the preparation piece is so important. And this is often what goes missed. So the decisions that you are making every single day in your health and life are the decisions that are preparing you for life's inevitable challenges that are going to come up. So I think the preparation piece is so important. And how this relates to women's health is that we can become more resilient. We can become more resilient in our health and our lives. There's 4 spheres that I really work within in terms of women's health. I look at the physical aspect, so we can have a more resilient body. I work with the mental aspect. We can have a more resilient mind. I work with the emotional aspect because we can certainly be more emotionally resilient, which is the most common context that people think about resilience within. And then we can be spiritually resilient, which has to do with being connected to our life purpose. And interestingly, there's some really cool research that shows a reduced risk of all-cause mortality and a reduced risk of having physical or mental ailments related to being connected to our life purpose. So very interesting to consider that in terms of spiritual resilience. And of course, again, it all connects back to our health.
So if we start to cultivate resilience, and I know you're going to get into it and give us the good stuff, you're saying that we can potentially live longer and live better and just be optimal all around, which is super, super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It impacts every area of our health and lives. And it's something that maybe it's never been framed that way for you, or it's not something that you're aware of. But I want to emphasize too, in case someone is thinking, well, I just don't have that ability. It wasn't something I was born with. No one taught me this. I want to emphasize that resilience is in your DNA. It is something you're actually born with. Our body systems are resilient, for example. So if you get a paper cut, that is going to heal. So there is going to be some inflammation going on, some redness, increase in circulation of white blood cells. They come to the area, they start with, repairing the area. So we have the ability to return to balance at, any given moment. Our body is always trying to bring us back to balance. So I want you to recognize that it is an inborn ability that you have been born with, but it's also something that you can really enhance and increase, something that I call the resilience reserve. So that's putting more energy and more resources into our tank for, again, when life's inevitable challenges come up, because they're going to happen for everyone. And we don't know moment to moment when that could happen.
So when you say put more in the tank, can you give us some specific examples of what that might look like for us when our life is on fire, or we're just maybe feeling stuck, which I feel like is more of us right now?
Sure. So some examples are, we can talk about doing our best with the foundation. So, for example, getting adequate sleep. There might be stresses or challenges going on, but trying to protect our sleep time is really important to think about. So, you want to make sure that you're giving yourself an opportunity for between 7 to 9 hours to sleep every night. So, that is really key. So, emphasizing that as a foundation, because that will influence your energy, of course, the next day, your appetite, how your body systems are functioning. There's some early changes we can experience with just a little bit of sleep loss. So that's one important foundation. The food that we're putting in our bodies is really important to consider. And there's no right, nutrition for everyone, but eating the foods that really make you feel well is important to consider. So another piece to think about is mindful movement. So mindful movement being very tuned in to what your body's needs are at the time. So, for example, there might be times where if you're under a lot of stress, perhaps doing a really high intensity workout is actually not the best. And we certainly want to be considering maybe you just need a walk at that time. So being really mindful during your movement as well. And sometimes as women, we might have tendencies to use movement as a way to punish ourselves for, what you ate or something like that. And it's certainly not a healthy way to move as a result of that. So you want to be really mindful again and tuning into your body's needs and then moving accordingly in a way that feels really good in your body.
Oh, I love that. I mean, how often do we all hear, and I'm sure we've even all said this, oh, I just had this dinner. It's okay. I'll go for a big walk tomorrow. I'll go for a jog. I'll do something that feels semi-painful
Yeah.
to punish myself for doing something that maybe felt good in the moment. And yeah, that seems like it would drain our tank a heck of a lot more. And I know we both see that in terms of adrenal status and our ability to fall asleep, or our
Yes.
ability to, I'm tired, I'll have a cup of coffee. This is not coffee. So I'll feel jittery and angry and anxious later. It's it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So I love that you touched on that.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit more. This is all so good. And for those of you that are joining us on the recording, please do say hi. We are taking questions live. And if you're joining us on Facebook, I am monitoring our Facebook feed. It's like a NASA liftoff over here. So please wave hello, tell us where you're coming from, and we are more than happy to answer your burning questions. This is why we are here, to help you figure it the heck out. So this is so good. Give us more, Tara. What
Sure.
other specific things can we do to help fortify ourselves when things are kind of on fire?
Absolutely. So sometimes too, when things are very stressful and difficult for us, a feeling of overwhelm can come up quite often. So, as another human being and a woman, I recognize this, and I am not immune to experiencing stress or difficulty. So something that I try to do to break things down into smaller pieces, I look for micro opportunities, is what I call them, throughout a day to even just breathe or practice my resilience reset techniques, whatever it is, but something that calls upon mindfulness and focus in the moment. So, for example, it could be that you're making coffee in the morning or you're boiling the tea kettle. There's a few moments of idle time. So I want you to think about some idle moments throughout your day. Right now, so much we're not waiting in lineups anywhere out in public. But if you were waiting in a lineup, that's a great time to be practicing mindfulness techniques or anything that makes you feel good in that moment, just to take pause. And again, it could just be a few deep breaths, whatever you need to do to bring yourself back to the present moment. So take advantage and recognize what those micro opportunities are that show up throughout your day, because that feels often a lot easier when you're going through a lot of stress or difficulty than it is to say, I commit to doing something for an hour at a time. Like, it can feel very overwhelming, like you don't have that time.
Mm-hmm.
Even those little moments add up. So in my work with patients, I can see objectively on a screen when they are connected to a monitor that is looking at a measurement called heart rate variability, or HRV for short. This is different than heart rate itself. And it's a reflection of what's happening right now in your autonomic nervous system in your body. And the autonomic nervous system is responsible for our ability to recover, from a stressor in our environment. And also it's responsible for launching our stress response. So I can see on the screen what's happening. The patient can see what's happening on the screen at the same time. And even within sometimes a few seconds, you can see a noticeable change where they just settle into their more parasympathetic nervous system and they're more relaxed. It's really incredible to witness. So I know from experience clinically and personally that even if you feel like those couple moments of taking a few deep breaths isn't doing anything, it in fact is. It is shifting gears in your nervous system. So there's evidence that that can make a change in such a short time. So just take advantage of any opportunity. It doesn't have to be long. Could be a few seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever it is, just take that time.
I love it. I know when we're often feeling overwhelmed, there can be this tendency to almost grasp at straws and be like, I'm going to meditate a half hour a day or do this yoga challenge. And like, it's going to be a whole thing. And then we can start to set ourselves up for failure if we just miss it one day. But I love that idea of just taking those little snack sized opportunities to do things. Now, you mentioned that you're using some kind of tech to monitor this quantitatively with your patients. Do you mind sharing with us what that is?
Sure. So I'm using some technology in my office, again, where patients are connected to a monitor. It clips on their ear and it's looking at one main measurement is called heart rate variability. So it's so interesting to see those changes. It's a form of biofeedback. So on the screen, it's communicating to myself as the clinician and to the patient what is happening inside their bodies, and then we can adjust to that. And there's so much learning that happens in that process. I can see how people respond to sound. How do they respond to a certain word? As an example, this is a population that I've worked with quite a bit, perimenopausal women, much like yourself, who, for example, might have challenges with heart palpitations, and then they have a lot of health anxiety around that. So for them, it can feel like they might be dying. Like it really creates a lot of fear. And I can understand when you have a shift in your body and you're feeling symptomatic that can be scary. But even if I use the word heart in our communication when we're talking and they're connected to the monitor, you see a shift where fight or flight mode pops up with the nervous system. You can see that fear response happening. It's pretty incredible.
Wow. So in terms of heart rate variability, I know this has been coming up a little bit more on our personal tracking devices more and more. And I know I've fielded some questions myself of like, does this have anything to do with my heart? My doctor said my blood pressure is fine, but heart things run in my family. What exactly is our heart rate variability and how does it tie into resilience?
Sure. I could speak to that. So heart rate variability is a measurement of essentially the space between the beats of your heart. And over time, that creates a waveform on the screen on a graph. And if you had equal spacing between your heartbeats, that is not a good thing because you are basically going to flatline on the screen. Over time, we want to see that there's variability between like fractions of a second difference from one heartbeat to the next. That is really important. Now, heart rate variability is not diagnostic. So it's not something that at the end it tells me, oh, you have a specific heart condition. But what it tells me is about the tone of your nervous system. It tells me about your responsiveness to stress. It gives me indications of what could be going on from a functional perspective. So the greater degree of heart rate variability at rest, for the most part, this is a simplification, so the greater heart rate variability, then the greater resilience that you have physiologically. And of course, it ties into your thoughts, it ties into your emotions and your purpose. It all connects, because when we're talking about those things and you're thinking certain thoughts, you'll see that shift happen, and it's influencing your physiology as well.
So by the sounds of it, what you're saying is we want our body to have a more variable, if not adaptive, response to stress so that we can keep up with whatever is coming at us in our environment, as opposed to being so steady and flatline and even keel.
You got it.
Kind of counterintuitive, because you and I both hear so often, I just want to be okay. I just want to keep going and be steady. But to my mind of thinking and what you're saying, we don't want to be steady. We don't necessarily want to just be balanced all the time. We want to have that little extra reserve in the tank to deal with things when it hits the fan, but also to lay low when we have that opportunity to pause with your micro meditative breaks, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's true. We want flexibility in our systems, in our body, in our thinking, in our emotional well-being. We want flexibility. We want the ability to adapt and to change given the circumstances, whether they're external circumstances or internal circumstances. We want to be able to have that flexibility, and that's shown in heart rate variability.
Mic drop. That is amazing. I love it, Tara. So tell us a little bit more, like, why did you start into this work? I mean, we all had a similar naturopathic training. We've worked in similar clinics. You and I both worked at Anishinaabe, which is a native health center in Toronto. We all work with women's health, but how did you really start to center in on this work with this resilience focus?
Sure.
And
Well,
why
I
does it
think,
matter?
sorry,
And why does it matter?
why does it matter? Yes. There's certain personal health challenges that I've dealt with throughout my life, personal life challenges as well. And I've always been fascinated with learning more and how can I grow. And I've really started to narrow in on looking for the opportunity in difficulty. And I came across the work from the Institute of Heart Math, and it just like blew my mind. I was so intrigued by the work and the research that they were doing there all around resilience. And so I just dug in really deep to that. I wanted to learn for myself. I wanted to learn to be able to contribute more to my patients' care. So it's something that I took upon myself to learn in addition to our naturopathic training. And I want to say that there was an experience last year that really reaffirmed this work. It really reaffirmed my commitment to it. And in 2019, it was July 31st, I went to bed like any other night. And I woke up to a frantic, loud knock on the door. It was 3:17 a.m. And, nothing good happens after midnight. So I was pretty alarmed and afraid when I woke up. My husband and I went to the front door, and there were two police officers at the front door. And of course, being human and startled in the middle of the night, I was just, in an instant panic. I thought something is seriously wrong. That is not the kind of scene you want to happen. And they informed us that the building where my practice was located was burning to the ground currently. And, that was incredibly difficult, I'm sure, for them to deliver that news. And they do that regularly. And I commend them for their difficult work. And in that moment, I was, just, okay, is anyone injured? Is anything? No, okay. No one was injured. No one was killed. It was a miracle. But I still felt all the pain, all the trauma, all the emotions that went along with that, the what ifs, again, just like any other human being. But it really reaffirmed my work in resilience. I really, I used and implemented all the tools that I learned, and I also had to dig deeper than ever before to go through that process. I was, buried in paperwork, having no place to work, I had patients the next morning, having to be a leader and really step up in that moment where I was suffering and undergoing a trauma. I had to step up and be a leader and continue to communicate, reassure others that they were okay. I also connected with my own healthcare team, which is something that I think is so important for everyone to have a healthcare team. So I stepped up and I reached out to them, and they helped me and supported me through that. And within 12 days, I was able to get past the trauma, see the opportunity, be set up in a new clinic space, and work with my patients. And that wouldn't be possible for a number of reasons, including my community around me, my friends, my family, my colleagues like you were there at that time. So it wouldn't be possible without all those people. So I want you to know too, resilience is not a solo act. Resilience is something that requires broader support from others around us in our inner circle and in our broader community as well. But that experience just really reaffirmed the importance of my work. So resilience matters because you never know when something difficult is going to show up. It could be a circumstance, it could be an event, it could be whatever. You just never know. And I didn't anticipate answering the door to that kind of problem that night. I would have never expected that. So you just have to be prepared. And it goes back to the definition of resilience and the often overlooked part of preparation. And I had just come back from a really wonderful, restful vacation with my husband. So I plan vacation throughout our year so that we are taking breaks and deep rest. That's important. I was sleeping well. I was eating great. I was using mindful movement consistently. All those things I was doing well. So it was those little decisions also that added up to my ability to recover, to adapt to that major challenge that showed up. And again, it wouldn't be possible without the community around me as well, and all the work that I had put in to my own self-care on resilience.
Oh my goodness. So, wow. I mean, that is absolutely one of our practitioners' worst nightmares. And I've just been completely in awe and humbled by how much you have rebuilt since then with an even clearer focus on what you do. And I love that you've really taken in what you do. It's not just something that you speak about, but really adapted that. And I'm sure you're coming at your work with your clients with even far more empathy than before. And I love this idea that I often think of our health in terms of finances because that's what many people understand. But if you get one bill in the mail, it can be the end of the world if you don't have any savings aside. But if you have planned for emergencies all along, then it's not the end of the world. And much like our health, as you're saying, if we've made those micro deposits and those major deposits against our health debt, we are a lot more resilient. We are a lot more adapted and able to withstand the things that happen that we can't necessarily foresee. So, oh my goodness, I am completely awed by what you have been able to do personally and professionally in the last almost a year since that happened.
Yeah, thank you, Keila. And I think that's a really great analogy. And that was a really big bill to
Oh
receive
my goodness.
that night. But I'd like to share too, maybe a little bit about a practice that I developed since then, which took my resilience training even further. I think it might be beneficial for your audience to hear.
Please give us the straight goods.
Okay. So this is actually the subject of a 7-day challenge that I'm working on right now so that people can be walked through it step by step with all the background. And again, this arose because of this situation, and I needed something even more than what I was already relying on. I just needed something more, and I knew that. So I decided to give myself a week challenge because I knew that if I committed to something long term, because again, like I'm human, I will self-sabotage at times. I will like battle myself on things, even when I set goals and I know it's for my higher good. So I experience those challenges as a human being too. So I'm like, okay, Tara, you could do this. Just do it for 7 days. And see where it goes, see how you feel. So I decided that I was going to go for a walk every single morning for 15 minutes in nature. That's all I had to do. Was just commit to that 15 minutes for 7 days. And I was like, okay, that should be all right. You could do that.
Takes more
So
time
I
to
commit.
get shoes on and everything than to actually be outside, huh?
Yeah. And it's hilarious. I like to let you in on my self-talk that goes on in my mind, because I think it's helpful to know everyone has that inner voice. And I think it's important to like be able to have ways to like work around that and understand how your voice, your inner voice speaks to you.
Please tell us
Um,
everything. We want to absorb all of your wisdom, Tara.
so I set out on my walk, and I decided to add other couple elements for interest, because walking, okay, nature, beautiful, but I wanted to like up level it. I really needed to shift things. And let me back up a moment. I'll tell you why I decided to develop this challenge. I was testing out a new heart rate variability monitor on myself. And it's a wearable monitor, and I noticed every single time I left the house that I would go into like fight or flight mode in my body. So I was getting into a zone of distress, and it was not good. And I'm like, I don't like this feeling. And in my mind I was feeling rushed, and that is like one of the yuckiest feelings for me. So then, okay, enter the challenge. So I decided to do the challenge, and I thought, well, how do I want to feel instead? And I decided that I wanted to experience the emotion of awe. Every time I go in nature, I feel awe. I really pay attention to the little details, just the way that, the leaves are colored in the fall, or the bloom of a flower, the patterns of the pine needles, how are they're lined up on the tree, like all those things, like they totally fascinate me. So I wanted to cultivate the emotion of awe. Nature was going to be the best way for me to do that the most rapidly. 15-minute walk, so integrating mindful movement. And on top of it, I was like, you know what, to tune into the mindfulness piece even more, because I could just kind of go through the motions. I'm going to also take a few photos, like some really beautiful photos on interesting angles of like whatever catches my attention in nature. So that's what I did. And after 7 days, and I was feeling great. I didn't have that feeling of being rushed anymore. I was leaving for work in a state of being like relaxed and light. I felt the emotion of awe, which I had studied previously, and that's why I picked that emotion. Has so many potential health benefits to it. So it can help us with feeling more humble, more relaxed, more connected to other people, more generous. Like there's so much that awe can do for us as an emotion, and I really wanted to cultivate it. So I did that, and I felt those ways. I just felt more connected to people, my work, just from 15 minutes. Like that's it. And those photos again really helped me tune into it. I shared them on social media every day when I started this challenge, because I wanted to be accountable, and it inspired so many other people to start either morning walks or just walking more. And it felt really good to be connected to my broader community in that way as well.
Amazing. I've always noticed that the busier that you are, the more content and the more that you seem to be doing, the more nature pictures that you post, which is great. It's such a helpful reminder that when we are busy, that we almost have to intentionally challenge ourselves. And of course, there's so many benefits to being outside, forest bathing, or staring at a plant. But I think even especially now that many of us tend to be even more confined,
Mhm.
self-confined in many ways, because there's no rules about hanging out in your own backyard by yourself.
Right.
Um, that I think it's helpful to have that kind of push. Is that something that you are willing to share with our viewers, your challenge?
Yeah, I can, like, it's not quite ready yet, so I'm
Okay.
more than happy to share that when it is ready. But I can also share a little bit more. There's a mantra recently that's really helped me in moments where I felt stressed, or I felt overwhelmed by a problem. I want to share this because it's been one of the most impactful things that I've been doing recently. And again, I think it could really benefit your audience as well.
Amazing. Bring it all on.
So I created a mantra recently. Again, when I get stuck in a moment of fear or panic or overwhelmed with a problem, and it's a reminder to me. And I did a little, I created a little graphic for it, and it's my phone background, so I see it all the time now. And it says on it, "I am here, here and now. There is only peace in the present moment." So I think this is important because when I do, take a pause and I take a few breaths and I say this mantra, I'm like, whoa, there are literally no problems right now in this moment. The problems are in our past. So in our past, we might be thinking about how could I have done this better? What did I do wrong? Or, I'm upset that this occurred or this didn't meet my expectations. That's all in the past. And then problems are also in the future. Problems are what we're anticipating may happen, like, oh, well, this could happen. And what about this? And so that's another place where we'll find problems and we'll lose our connection to peace. And the interesting part is that the only thing that exists is the present moment. So the past and the future don't even exist at all. They only exist in our mind as, looking back on things or like a future anticipation of something that has not even occurred. So this has been something that has really helped me recently. And I've just really narrowed in on this mantra. And that's what works for me. But you can develop any mantra that you want to, that you really resonate with. Use the words that are really powerful to influence yourself. And you can use it to help bring you back to the present moment and really realize that if you are just taking those few deep breaths and you're very present, there are no problems. There's only peace.
That is so freeing and incredibly obvious, but not incredibly obvious unless you focus on that, hey?
So true. It's one of those things.
Like, of course, of course. I love that. And you have such a creative flair to you. And I love all of your Instagram and Facebook posts. What are you using to design this so that it's something that you love looking at?
Sure. So the program that I'm using is called Canva, and you can use it as a free program. I have the paid version, but you can use a free program, and that's where I create graphics. So I picked an image of someone like meditating, because for me, that is one way to be in the present and is like an instant symbol as the background. And then I chose some pretty colored text and font that I really liked. And then I wrote out that mantra. I downloaded the image and then I saved it as my phone background. You could do the same thing for your computer. You could print it out and have it on your mirror. You could print it out and have it on your desk or fridge or anywhere that you want to keep this as a reminder, because I think it's important the way we speak to ourselves. Our self-talk matters. It has an influence on how we're feeling and our health.
I love it. So it's like the upgraded, higher, slightly higher tech version of an adult coloring book for on mental health beyond once you've completed that picture, hey?
That's a great way to describe it.
So it's like Canvas, but without the S, canva.com. That's a really great tip. And again, obvious, but if you've never done it before, you can kind of get hung up on, oh God, I need to make this background to make it work. But I love how simple you made that. So you've talked about a number of things, this nature challenge, creating a mantra, and I really like yours, creating a visual reminder to yourself on your phone, on your desktop, on your mirror, somewhere that you are going to be seeing it. You talked about simple breathing exercises as like micro breaks when you're brewing your tea or your coffee, when you go to the bathroom's a cool time, or you're waiting for your partner to get out of the bathroom. My case, that's changing endless diapers, these small micro breaks. Anything else, anything specific that you think would be really useful to our viewers and watchers and listeners in their jammies with cups of tea later on,
Sure.
that can make another leveraged impact for our mental well-being right now?
Definitely. Well, I can take you through a brief exercise if you'll indulge me in that. I can take you through a brief exercise that is an evidence-based technique that I use as part of my Resilience Reset program. It's the foundation to all the techniques. And also, I have a free audio recording after. If you want me to offer that to your audience, I'm more than happy to, but I can take you through an experience right now so you can have a really short 2-minute experience of what's called heart focused breathing.
Tara, you know I'm going to say yes to anything that you offer. Lay it on us.
All right. All right. So heart focused breathing, it's again, it could be a 2-minute experience. I'm going to talk you through it in about 2 minutes or perhaps even less. But this could be something that you do even quicker, because right now I'm going to talk you through it. But really you can get into this state in an instant once it's practiced. So I'll invite you to close your eyes for a moment so that you can really focus in on my words and then tune into your body during this experience. So I'll have you close your eyes and just pay attention to your breathing. Now you can focus on the area in the center of your chest where your heart is. And if it helps to draw your attention there, you could put your hands over your heart. So eyes closed, hands over heart. You can continue to breathe. And I want you to imagine that your breath is flowing in through your heart area and out through your heart area. Breathe at a rhythm that is comfortable for you. Could be about 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. And continue your breathing as you focus on your heart until you find a natural rhythm. And then you can take this feeling into your day. And I'll invite you when you're ready to open your eyes again. So that's the heart-focused breathing technique. And it's really simple. You don't even have to do it for that long. That's simply as long as it takes me to say it and to teach you it for the first time. But I've created an audio recording of that, narrated to music. So it's a downloadable MP3, which is something beautiful because you can just pop in headphones wherever you are anytime. You can download it to your phone, to your computer. I also, in what I call a stress relief kit, it comes with a printable PDF of the instructions in case, maybe you're not available to do the audio, listening at the time. You'll have the, again, visual reminder. I think visual reminders are so important, and it has the instructions written on it. And then the third piece, which we didn't talk about, and I'm still happy to talk about this if you'd like, is a 13-page PDF guide called Write It Out, Journaling for Stress, Overwhelm, and Burnout. Because I think that journaling can be a really critical piece of training ourselves to become more resilient.
Oh my goodness, that is wonderful. And I feel like just listening to your voice already, I can feel my breath calming. I can feel my frenetic energy calming. That's amazing. You have really developed some beautiful resources. So I'd be more than happy to share that if you were offering. That is so wonderful and generous of you, Tara. So I'd like to remind our viewers and anyone that's joining live and on the replay, we are happy to answer questions and I'll be monitoring. But I'd like to switch gears a little bit with the last bit of our interview to talk a little bit more about what you do personally, and we'll keep an eye out for questions. Is that cool, Tara?
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. So what are the health essentials or health practices that you are most consistent with? What can we not pry out of your iron grip if we needed to?
Well, I am very protective about my sleep. I'm very protective, and I can be a grumpy bear if my sleep is interfered with in any way, shape, or form. So sleep is really important to me. And also as part of my personal health journey, I experienced a pretty debilitating sleep disorder for many years, and it is actually what led me in part to naturopathic medicine. And along with that, I experienced quite a bit of, symptoms that were as a result of having so much sleep loss and deprivation. So sleep is something that I fiercely protect. That is really important to me. I'm very obsessed with sleep, and I'm always trying to tune into like how I can get an even better sleep yet. I think I will continue to do that for the rest of my life. Sleep,
That's
I just love.
for resting efficiency.
So sleep is a really important one for me. And also like my morning walk ritual that I've just fallen in love with. And it's something that helps me cultivate the emotional state that I want to be in. And for me, that is a really important piece of the puzzle. I didn't know how important it was going to be at the time when I just said, we're going to do this for 7 days, self. And I challenged myself to that. But now it's become so important to me. And at times, if I have run out of time, I will just go outside. Or I had a knee injury once after soccer, and I couldn't walk with ease. So I decided that I'm just gonna like put on my parka. This is a full on winter, and I'm gonna just sit in the backyard and like, yeah, I'm just gonna meditate for a little bit outside because I can't go for my usual walk. So I think it's important to set ourselves up to have some variety, some flexibility, some self-compassion if we can't get around to something even that matters to us most, and that sometimes we'll fail to be absolutely consistent, and that's okay.
Amazing. So you've got your wake up and your bedtime ritual that you're doing. Can you share with us a little bit about your sleep ritual, since this is your thing that you do?
Sure. Well, for me, it's really important to wind down and to tune into really positive thoughts in the evening. So I read uplifting books, things that really help me with my mindset and my emotional state. I find it's just a time, like in the evening, I have a lot of mental clarity and I can absorb things, which is interesting because I know not everyone necessarily has that experience. So that's when I'll squeeze in like a little bit of reading time to go to sleep. And I know this is going to sound hilarious, but I sleep with earplugs. And I can still hear through them when there's an emergency that has certainly come up and I've responded. But that being said, I sleep with earplugs because it really insulates noise. And thankfully, I do live in a quiet area anyway. But for me, like having that completely restful sleep means also tuning out exterior noise. And this was a little bit of a compromise because I used to sleep with a fan to have the white noise to sort of tune things out, but my husband can't sleep with any noise.
No.
So he was using earplugs. I'm like, okay, let me get on board with the earplugs and like try that out. So I sleep with earplugs, which is probably funny to people. And also this is another interesting little sleep hack that I read about recently. I talked about with a colleague. I think I learned about it from a colleague first, and I'm like, you know what, I need to explore this, which is mouth taping.
Tell us more about mouth taping.
Have you heard about it?
I have, through watching Dr. Ben Lynch, and I
Okay.
feel like our mutual colleague, was it Dr. Lisa Napper, was doing a mouth taping? No.
Well, maybe, but it was for sure Dr. Michelle Paris and Dr. Sarah Vadbonker. That we've been talking about it recently on social media. So in any case,
Not for the faint of heart.
what's that?
Not for the faint of heart, or if you have a partner easily spooked.
Right. And again, anything that we've shared throughout this interview that I've shared, or, it's none of it is intended as medical advice. Let's just give that little disclaimer. Anything that I'm sharing, these are personal practices or things that I recommend to patients, and you do need your own healthcare provider to run this by.
And we try all this stuff ourselves, of course.
So disclaimer in place, I'll tell you a little bit about mouth taping. So I've been a lifelong mouth breather. And it's something, structurally, I have a deviated septum, which means like, interiorly my nose is kind of crooked inside. So it affects my breathing. And I've had a lot of health concerns, and this is kind of about the whole sleep disorder thing anyway, that relate to upper respiratory stuff. So mouth breathing is a thing that I'm just like so used to that it's hard for me to do anything but that. So at night, I use tape that you might use for an IV, and I tape my mouth before I go to sleep. And I know that can sound terrifying to people. I tried it first when I was awake, before I went to sleep, because I wanted to just explore like, how does that actually feel? And you can breathe well through your nose, and it forces you to breathe through your nose. And I've noticed that I get such a better sleep when I do mouth taping. I feel more rested the next day. I just feel more at ease. Like my emotions are more in check. Like everything is really shifted. I don't need as much sleep as I used to,
Hmm.
since I've been mouth taping. And I just think my oxygenation is so much better. I think that it's really improved it. And again, this is just study of one, on the mouth taping strategy. But I thought, well, it can't hurt, because I tried it when I was awake and I could tell like I could breathe with ease. So I wasn't afraid. Um, and if there's been times where I have been congested nasally, then I just won't mouth tape that night. But I can tell you I don't sleep as well.
So my next question was going to be, what is something super cool that you learned about recently? And I think that totally takes the cake. I mean, maybe having a picture would be even cooler. Um, Unless there's something even cooler than that, I'm like, I'm so going to try this tonight.
Sure. Well, I mean, yeah, I actually, I thought about this, and because I'm always learning. It's one of my top 5 strengths finders. I don't know if you've ever done that test, but one of my top 5 is learner. So I love learning new things, and I'm always learning. And actually, maybe it was yesterday, I learned a technique from one of our friends, Melissa Biscardi, who's a nurse and also an osteopath. She works in rehab for concussion. But she was showing a cool demo of how you can massage your SCM, which is like the muscle right here on either side of your neck, to stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system and your vagus nerve. And it can really help to calm you. And I thought, oh, that's so cool. I love having a hands-on technique. And it's interesting to me too, because at times, like, I will actually do this unconsciously,
Mhm.
but not maybe massaging the way that she mentioned, which is doing both sides for about 3 to 4 minutes. So I thought, oh, this is fascinating. I need to try it. And when I did try it, when I learned this yesterday, I was like, oh, that is totally calming and soothing. And I think it is important for us to have strategies that we can implement in the moment if we're feeling stressed or anxious. And that's why I wanted to share so many examples of that today with you.
That is so cool.
Isn't it neat?
Most of us have rock hard sternocleidomastoid muscles, so the one that goes from right behind your ear down to the center of your collarbone. Most of us, this area is so, so, so tight, and it's difficult for a manual therapist to get into that area adequately to the amount that most of us need. So I love that. I'm playing around with my neck a whole lot. That's awesome. Anything that you're reading right now? What are you doing for fun?
Ooh. Oh, so I'm one of these people who has like 10 books on the go at a time, and I'll like pick them up when I feel like it. But the one that I'll share that I think would maybe be interesting to your audience too is that, it's called The Code of the Extraordinary Mind, by Vishen Lakhiani, and he's the founder of Mind Valley. And it's such a great book. There's so many practical steps and frameworks and different ways of thinking about how to change your mind and ultimately change your life through the way that you're thinking, the way that you approach challenges and problems. And one key element that has really stuck with me out of this book is that he really emphasizes questioning your beliefs. Like, what are these rules that maybe you've taken in, from society, from our parenting, from school, from peers, whatever, throughout our lives, that can maybe keep us contained, in a way that might not always be healthy. So he really emphasizes questioning those rules and resetting new rules for ourselves if that's something that's not serving us anymore.
Would you be willing to take us through an example?
Um, of like specifically like the rules or.
Well, for example, I hear a lot of my clients coming in saying, I'm anxious.
Hmm.
And I get that for so many of us, we do tend to be anxious, or I don't handle conflict well, and we kind of create these fixed, definite ideas of how we function and how we are and who we are. Is that something like that kind of approach would be helpful with this book?
Oh yeah, 100%. It's literally about questioning everything, and particularly areas that feel like a problem or challenge, because the other rules we might have for ourselves, if they're not problematic, we're not like, great, they're working for you. It's more like where you feel like you're stuck or there's some barrier or obstacle that you can't get past. Those are really important areas to question. I like your example of anxiety too. For example, someone who associates anxiety with a particular experience. Well, why do you feel anxious with public speaking? Like, did something happen in the past? Did someone tell you something maybe when you spoke up in the past that stuck with you? Where did that rule come from where you're experiencing anxiety in that way, if you're standing out or using your voice or speaking up? So I think it's interesting to question that, because it can really lead us to the root cause of problems, and then we can rewrite things from there. And we both know as naturopathic doctors that getting to the root cause is one of the most important things for being able to move people forward.
Oh, I love it. Code of the Extraordinary Mind. That has been on my list to read. I think I will audible that one quickly. Are you an audiobook listener, or do you prefer the tactile version?
Oh, this is a great question. So I love books so much that I have them, I listen to them on Audible. I have an e-reader, and I have like bookshelves upon bookshelves upon bookshelves. And sometimes I'll have books in all three formats, because I may have picked it up on Audible first, but I'm like, no, like I want this in my hands, and I want to be able to open it whenever I want. I want the physical tactile experience of it. So I don't discriminate on format.
Oh, book hoarders. Yes, this is my life here. Book hoarding, book hoarding, book hoarding. And now we're book hoarding books for tots. So it's that is awesome. Do you listen to audiobooks while you walk as well, or do you keep that practice separate?
That's a great question, because I will actually vary my experience. Sometimes I do actually listen to audiobooks. Sometimes I listen to podcasts. But also, one thing that I do is I'll often download walking meditation to listen along, so that if it's a day where my mind is maybe just overactive and I want to slow things down, I'll do a walking meditation. So the guided walking meditation helps me to tune into, the sound of my footsteps, the feeling of the blood flowing, the pace of my breath, everything around me. So it helps me to tune into all my senses so that I can be more grounded. So I really vary up that experience while I'm walking.
I love that. I shared on my Instagram stories yesterday my favorite walking meditation as I was out with my daughter. And I am someone that finds it difficult to sit down and meditate as much as I always feel so much better afterwards. And the walking meditation that I love is just simply counting my steps and my breath. And it's something I share with most of my patients that get a little squirrely and fidgety like me. And I'm sure yours is, there's so many variations, but what I find works for me is inhaling for a count of 5 steps and exhaling for 7, and just repeating. And with my short little legs, that works. If it's on a hill, we've got a really hilly town nearby where everyone there gets a great butt because you're walking up all the time. That's a little different when you're walking in St. Mary's. And I find that that occupies my attention span. So if like your brain is like just wandering around like a frantic squirrel on acid, it's it's difficult to feel calm. You just feel anxious. But if X amount of your focus is taken up just simply counting, I find that this remainder is just a lot clearer, a lot freer. And I've often come up with some really cool creative strategies to deal with things because part of my consciousness is occupied. And I'm sure that there's some research behind to support that. I know with doodling and kids with ADHD, that seems to be helpful as well. Do you have any extra insight on that, Tara?
Well, I think that's really interesting that you say it. I wouldn't say there's any additional insight, but what I would maybe add to it is that I agree, like sitting meditation maybe isn't for everyone, or is like a very trained skill for some people. And I like to think about it too, if you're feeling stressed or anxious and like you feel maybe restless and you need that movement, I love the idea of a walking meditation. Or again, if you're just someone who's like generally more fidgety and you have that physical energy, like put it into movement, channel it. You can still be mindful while you're moving.
And it's great if you're constantly around your family all the time and you're with someone that's constantly fidgeting. It's far less annoying if they go out and do that instead of Tara, it is such a pleasure and a joy chatting with you. You are just, I can feel the calm coming across from Cincinnati to Stratford, Ontario, and I so appreciate your time today. Is there any other nuggets of wisdom that you want to leave us with before we learn about more where to find you?
Maybe just a summary that, you know, we're all born resilient. You have it within you and you can build up that capacity. So it's something that we all have access to, and you don't need a major stressor or crisis in order to build it up. You can build your resilience reserve at peace, at rest. It's the decisions that you make every day that really prepare you for what's to come. So I think that's an important maybe summary to leave everyone with.
So how we breathe, how we move, how we eat, how we sleep, how we think, how we wear our stress adds to our health bank account, so to speak.
All of it.
Work can cost us, and we're always working on saving up and building our health resiliency. I love it. Tara, where can people find more about you and access some of those great resources that you chatted about with me today?
Sure. So my favorite social channel to hang out on is Instagram. So you can find me there at DrTaraGuzzond. So at Dr. Tara Guzzo ND. And I also want to offer your audience too, if they'd like to have access to the stress relief kit that I created, that's available at taraguzzo.com/calm, CALM.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me, Tara. And thank you for those that are watching and listening on the replay. This is Dr. Tara Guzzo, naturopathic doctor and acupuncturist, and I'm Dr. Keila Roesner, where we are trying to figure it out. I will look forward to seeing you all next week for another episode of Let's Figure It Out. We are still nailing down our schedule, but stay tuned for the replay there. And in the meantime, I have just launched a new course called From Fine to Freaking Fabulous, and we are talking about some of these basics that Dr. Tara touched on in 10 minutes or less for 10 videos, each over 10 days, talking about the basics that we wish we all knew, but you did such a beautiful, eloquent, articulate job of covering this, Tara. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much, Keila. I appreciate you having me here today and having this discussion. I think it's really important for women to hear this messaging right now. I really admire the work that you're doing, and thank you also to everyone who tuned in with us.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Go out and
Bye.